So you have a basis now. You have at least, 16 or 18 definitions of innovation from some very good sources, and it's something you can take back to your organization if you're involved in any kind of initiative around innovation, and use this information to help come up with your own organization's definition. One thing that we did at GRCC is we call this the innovation funnel. And ideas were taken in and generated through this opportunity identification. And the whole idea is not every idea is going to score well, and not every idea is going to move forward. And I heard a couple of the groups talking about processes in their organizations where ideas are generated, and they have a mechanism for people to go to your board of directors or leadership or a dean's council and present these ideas and make a case for funding. And then a lot of times it ends up in kind of a pilot group. There's some selection here, what we call opportunity selection. And then you do some development testing. Maybe you run a pilot group for 6 months or a year, depending on the kind of initiative it is. What gets out the other end through this innovation funnel is usually, a couple of ideas. But a couple of really good ideas, as I think Liz demonstrated in her slide, can actually generate, some huge amounts of and not just dollars, but impact on your community, on your students, on your staff and faculty. And so I think there's a lot of very different kinds of benefits from using these tools. And that's really what we talk about in managing this whole, we call it an R&D portfolio. You have research and development, and you have products, but it's a different kind of product than what, a manufacturing organization has, but it's still a product. Whether it's a curriculum or whatever type of result that you come up with that you're trying to connect with your students or your organization. So that was the way that we used a picture, I think, to depict at GRCC how this core team was working and how we were working to generate ideas, narrow them down to the best, and then we used these scoring tools in this funnel to get it down to the point where we selected ideas for pilot. So you just went through this exercise. The next part, we're going to talk about strategic planning and blue ocean strategy. This is the book. I stopped by Barnes & Noble this morning. I had to stop there for something else, and I walked by and there was a whole stack of these. So they're very available at Amazon, very available at Barnes & Noble. Blue Ocean Strategy by Kim and Mawborn. The quick way to do this is to go to Harvard Business Review, and I'm not trying to promote any special store or publication, but they've done a number of different articles for Harvard Business Review, and you could purchase them as reprints, and they hone in on some of the best case studies and examples, some that we'll talk about here today, and then some about overall principles of what is Blue Ocean Strategy. So you can get a general orientation to Blue Ocean Strategy through a couple of these 11 or 12-page articles, and you'll get a really good background. Then the book just really goes into a lot more depth and actually starts to talk about the how different organizations use this tool. So it is a strategic tool. It is a tool. I like this slide. It talks about, you're defining your current state and you want to get to a future state, and you use innovation as a pathway or a tool. And, the successful ones are done through a good execution. So strategic planning clarifies the starting point and the desired future state, and innovation helps find the effective paths to get there. There's a really excellent book called Innovation Myths by a gentleman named Scott Beckun. I think it's B-E-C-K-U-N or U-M. I really like this book. It's a very short book. He was one of the developers of Internet Explorer for Microsoft, and which was a real innovation at the time. He talks about looking at what are identified as innovations in the rear view mirror. It looks so easy, it's like, wow, that was, and I think you'll see that today when we go through 3 or 4 examples. It just appears so easy. It's like, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I think of that? But the struggle to really get through that, I think Liz was talking about either in the presentation or at the table there, some of the adjectives you're coming up with was the struggle and those kinds of things. It is very much a struggle, and it's not a clear path often as you're charting out your innovation. You know, there's zigzags and roadblocks, and things get stalled, and the economy changes, and you have to drop what's probably a really good plan. All those things happen, and you have to react to that. So these are examples that, you know, can excite you, but it's also something you have to consider, that it's not always clear sailing as you go through these. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Now, there's also 10 strategic questions that we go through often with our customers and as a part of this workshop, and that's just a good tool, and it's in there for you to use. Some of these are a little bit maybe business-oriented, but this particular tool, Blue Ocean Strategy, I think you're going to see as we go through the examples, works well both in an industry setting, you know, for for-profit businesses. It works for nonprofits, and it also works for, you know, public sector types of situations. So it is applicable for your types of organizations. So what is blue ocean? Well, blue ocean is the contrast to red ocean. And red ocean is where most people are a lot of the time. You're competing in an existing market space, and let's face it, you all, in a sense, you have some competition, you know, whether it's with another school or some other kinds of alternatives, or there's competition for ideas within your organization to get resources. But it's the traditional path. A lot of organizations are constantly mired in, we've always done it this way. And so blue ocean is really capturing and creating new demand. It's finding creating an uncontested market space, making competition irrelevant. It's breaking the value-cost trade-off. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And then aligning the system to the activities in pursuit of a lower cost and differentiation. But often, and you're going to see this in a minute, higher value. A lot of times people talk about innovation or even just idea development as an either-or. You're either the low-cost producer or else you're the high value. So that's kind of the Nordstroms or the Walmart. And a lot of what we do in Blue Ocean Strategy is try to find a path that allows you to be lower cost, maybe not the lowest cost, but a lower cost and a high value simultaneously. And there's a tool, and that's the tool we're going to teach you here today, the GRCC, that can help you do that. This is what it's talking about, this simultaneous working on operating at a lower cost, but also increasing the value. It's really the cornerstone of this strategy and tool. The first example is it's called Formula One. It's a hotel chain. It started in Europe. It was originally aimed at the youth hostel market, and they went in with an idea. How many of you are familiar with the 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, you know, type? That's really where they pegged this. They went in and they studied 1-star and 2-star hotels in France. And the interesting thing is when they got done with this, they were so successful that that they started capturing the business traveler. They really started growing. Now Formula One is part of the Accord Group, which is a huge international hotel chain. I do this presentation. It's called Microsoft Dynamics. I go to different markets and talk to Microsoft customers about strategy and implementation. I use this example, and guy raised his hand, and he was actually working for the two guys that started Formula One and worked for Accord, and he said, yeah, the book is very accurate as far as reporting what they did with Formula One. But really, essentially, what they did is they wanted to provide a traveler with a good night's sleep, and they went in and they looked at these different amenities, and they saw that 1-star and 2-star had restaurants. They eliminated the restaurant. They had other kinds of, a higher level of architecture and treatment. They eliminated that. They had lounges. They eliminated the lounges. They kept the room size fairly small. I can't read this upside down. The receptionist, they had, a little lighter treatment on receptionists. The furniture, it was real interesting. They went lower scale on the furniture, but on bed quality, they exceeded 1- and 2-star. On hygiene, the rooms are extremely clean and well taken care of. And the quietness of the rooms, they used a lot of extra treatment as far as sound deadening so that the rooms were quiet. And then price, they hit right in the middle between a 1-star and 2-star, and they just completely took the market by storm. And they, as I said, they went well beyond the youth hostel. So what they did is they found out things that people didn't value. You know, what if you could find something that you've done for years that you just continue to assume that people value, but they don't? It costs you money, and you eliminate that, and nobody notices. But you take that money and you use it for something else and invest in something that people really do care about. So there is market research that has to often go with this. They took a risk and it worked, but they did a lot of research on it. So there's some numbers. You can look at these later as far as the comparison. It's in French francs, so you have to, you know, back when they had French francs, right, before the euro, I think the conversion rate was about 5 to 1. So the cost of building the room was 100,000 francs to 270,000 francs, so that would be divided by 5 to take that into dollars. Another example is yellowtail wine. Familiar with yellowtail wine? Same type of situation. They came into a market that was very saturated, was not growing. The hotel market was very saturated in Europe, was not growing. They looked at what is the current situation. They looked at premium wines versus budget wines. And there were all these factors like price, use of wine terminology, I can't pronounce that, above-the-line marketing, aging quality, prestige, wine complexity, kind of almost a snob kind of thing about wine.
Taste. Taste is the big.
I think taste would factor into wine complexity, probably, and maybe somewhat. It's in there, but it's not.
Okay.
So they used this 4-actions grid that we've talked about, which is what things should they eliminate, what do people not care about anymore, what things should they reduce, you need to keep it, but you can reduce the value of it, what are the new things that you need to create, and what should you raise. And what they came up with is they matched the low-price wines, they dropped all this kind of wine terminology and those things. They just didn't even hit that, or the aging quality. They didn't do much with the vineyard prestige or the wine complexity or the wine range. But they developed this, called it an easy drinking, fun experience, ease of selection, fun and adventure. So if you think about some of the beer commercials, you know, you see the train blast through the wall and there's all these guys running around and it's snowing and all, you know, it's a fun kind of thing. They actually captured that. And the way they did that is they had a plan. They went out, they put people in the street, they called on the stores, you know, the retailers, the liquor stores, and they had all kinds of like aprons and apparel tied into the kangaroo theme and all that kind of stuff, and they made it fun. And they really, they did a certain amount of advertising as well. They created a growth category in wine, which had been losing to other types of drinks, and just did a phenomenal job. And I think within a year, 18 months, they became the #1 selling red wine in America and just far surpassed anyone else. So the 3 things that we talk about, what you do when you create this, when you do this GRCC, when you use that tool, you want to create a focus. A great strategy has a clear focus, and it emphasizes only a few factors. You want to create divergence. The value curve, it stands apart significantly from the competition. It's this line where you see, you know, in this case, creation of something completely new that's never been done before in the category. Or in the furniture or the hotel example, you see this large blip here, you know, where they went for quality of the room, quietness, a good night's sleep is the theme. And then that's the third point, is focus, divergence, and then this compelling tagline. So for the wine example, it was this fun, easy drinking adventure. For the hotel room, it was a good night's sleep. They were able to tie that in. So this is really the tool that you use, and I think you have those on your table here as well. We're going to be using these in a few minutes. They eliminated these 3 items. they raised these 3 items, they reduced these items, and they created these items. That's really the analysis. It's a very traditional tool that you've probably used before, maybe in process mapping or other kinds of quality, where you look at what's the as-is state today. What's going on today? What are the important factors to the consumer of your services in this case? What do they need? What do you want to provide? What's irrelevant? What's missing? How do you redeploy resources then to use and get into these areas? Because let's face it, we're always in a situation of tight resources. So these are really the 2 main tools. The concept is this reducing cost while increasing value for the consumer, whoever the consumer is. Using the grid to define what you do in those 4 categories, and then plotting it on the strategy canvas, which is the final tool. And then from this, you develop your focus divergence and create your tagline, your compelling tagline. GRCC, these are some of the elements that GRCC looked at. And the as-is at GRCC was the old decision-making process, their legacy programs, good at any cost, large institutional systems, traditional cost accounting, experience, expertise, and results, credit and credentialing, which I'm guessing is academic credit, correct? Yeah. Not credit crunch things that we're going through in the market. Dynamic action-oriented teams. And these are some of the things that they started to create or raise. Innovation processes, rapid response, and customer intimacy, and focus on knowledge workers. So they have had a very clear strategy in working through. They used that stage gate process and the funnel and the ideas. And these were the ideas that that they went after, is creating this blue line here. So that's what we're going to have you do in a few minutes. I've got one more example I want to take you through. Again, this is a tool that is very powerful in the public sector. And there was a gentleman named Bill Bratton. Anybody familiar with Bill Bratton in that case study? He's done this at least 5 times. He's the police chief in New York City. He may have gone to L.A. after that. But he has gone in and generally within 2 years has completely reversed situations. Crime in New York was unconscionable. Many of you remember that. 30 and 40% increases in different serious crime categories. People couldn't go to the subways. It was really awful. Within 2 years, he used some techniques, some blue ocean techniques, and the concept in the book, and I can't even. It takes way too long to go into this in this kind of workshop, but it's called tipping point, where you get the critical mass of situations, and you do move some resources around, and that's really what he did. So he did situations like they allocated police individuals at virtually every gate and turnstile, but they didn't really analyze where the problems were, and so they figured out that all of the crime going on in the subway, first it was a small percentage of total really dangerous crime. It was more of a public image situation, but a lot of it was occurring within a very small area. So they, instead of deploying all these police folks all over every area, every turnstile, they focused them on certain areas, and they were able to actually reduce the number of people, police folks that were allocated to the subway system, and they were able to clean things up. And I'm really speeding through this story. There was a lot more to it. The other situation is they had 5% of their resources allocated to drugs. And you'll see in their map here in a second that they focused on quality of life crimes, which was the drug culture that was emerging in New York City. And they estimated that 50 to 70% of serious crimes were drug-related, but they only had 5% of their police resources allocated to drugs and working on it. And they worked 8 to 5. And most drug transactions took place over the weekend. It just took somebody to sit down and look at this stuff and from an outside perspective and see what was going on and say, we have to change some things. And so they were, a lot of this example in the book, and I would encourage you to look at the chapter, is really excellent because I think it's very applicable to, maybe revolting, the renegades back here at the back table, revolting against the status quo. because a lot of times the status quo is good in a lot of cases, but there are some things that maybe you have to shake up a little bit every so often, and that's really what Bill Bratton did in the city of New York. Any questions? I haven't really asked if you had any questions so far. I just rammed through this. Okay, boy, you guys are quiet. We're going to do a cell phone exercise. Everybody in here has a cell phone, right? Use a cell phone. Okay. There is a cell phone exercise, and the two key sheets that you use. This is one worksheet, and this is your strategy canvas. So, hang on just a second here. I know, I'm losing control here. Okay, can I have your attention? What you're going to do is you're going to go through this cell phone exercise. You're going to do the ERRC grid. We're going to talk about that for a couple of minutes. This is at your table, and then you'll translate that to a strategy canvas. And then we're going to have a couple of maybe 3 or 4 tables come up and present. So we're going to spend about a half an hour working through this exercise at your individual tables, and Moss and Liz and myself and Ann will circulate around and help. I don't think any of you will get stuck on this, but we'll be there to answer questions. And then we're going to have 3 or 4 tables present for the last 15 minutes. Now, here's what the cell phone exercise is. We'll talk about this in a second. But there's some tips to this. What you really do to do this exercise is you list out what are the factors of competition for this particular exercise. What are the different factors that an existing cell phone presents, to its customers? So in this case, you're going to pretend that you're executives, and you're going to do an executive cell phone. So what are the features in current cell phones that are offered? And then, so you list all that out, and then you're going to decide what things you want to eliminate, what you want to reduce, what you want to raise, and what you want to create. And I'm going to encourage you to only maybe do 2 or so for each of these, because you're not going to have time to do a really full-blown. You'll be able to see the focus and divergence generally pretty clearly. Then you're going to translate that to your graph here. And generally what you do, and we'll come around and help you with this, is that you want to put the things in first that you're going to eliminate. Then you put the things in that you're going to reduce, and then the things that you're going to raise, and then the last part is the create. Sometimes if you don't follow that sequence, the map just kind of crosses all over the place, and you don't really get a clear picture because you just have a bunch of lines that are continuing to cross. Now, really interesting, how many of you have heard of the jitterbug phone? You see that advertised on television? It's a big cell phone for seniors, yeah? And it's got big buttons, a big screen, very few features, and that's been on the market for a couple of years. We've been doing this exercise for about 4 or 5 years now, and we had a group that actually in a cell phone exercise, that's what they came up with. They said, we need a senior phone. It's got to be de-featured. It has to have big buttons and an easy-to-read screen and be easy to use for people who aren't used to cell phones or technology. And that was a winner. I mean, I'm sure that they sell a lot of phones that way. Okay. So we're almost ready to roll here. So you're all investors in a cell phone manufacturing firm, and you just led a management buyout, and you're all outside investors. This is your first meeting. You've got management, marketing, engineering all set in place. You've got solid suppliers with relationships with key suppliers in the Orient. You need to develop a concept for a new handset that we can sell to Sprint, Verizon. And the folks tell us they need a phone aimed at executives, and you call it the C phone for C-level. And it would be great to involve you, our investors, in a focus group session. So think of yourselves and your colleagues as the target market. What's the most common phone in use among you? So agree on that. Look at, agree that that's going to represent the competition. So you each have, maybe if you have your phones with you, you can look at things. There are things like battery life, ability to do emails. There's all kinds of features that you can talk about. What features do you really like on your phone? What features do you dislike on your phone? What features would you really like in your next phone? What are your top choices? So narrow that down to maybe 2 of them for eliminate, reduce, raise, and create. Record the choices on the grid, and then transfer those to the strategy canvas. You're going to draw an as-is of what your phone, the consensus of your phone is today, and then you're going to draw a to-be line, and then that's where you're going to get your focus and divergence on the strategy canvas. So is everybody fairly clear on that? We'll circulate around and help you.